Welcome, weary traveler. You've left the noise of the world behind and stepped into a realm untouched by time. Here, candlelight dances upon ancient stone walls, and the air carries the soft hum of forgotten lullabies. Beyond these gates, the night is gentle, and every story is a silver thread, weaving warmth around your heart. So rest your mind. Let each word be a quiet step into the halls of dreams until sleep, tender and deep, finds you. You are safe here, and the world drifts away. Chapter 1: The Quiet Arrival. Long ago, in the serene kingdom of Lunareth, time seemed in no hurry to pass. Days drifted like drifting clouds, and nights stretched like velvet cloth embroidered with stars. The land itself seemed to breathe in rhythm with the skies. Meadows rose and fell like soft sighs. Rivers curved in silver ribbons, and the forests whispered with a kindness that was almost human. It was a land where peace was not a rare guest, but a constant presence, as dependable as the rising of the moon. The people of Lunareth lived gently. They tended their gardens, baked bread whose warmth lingered through the night, and spoke in voices that rarely rose above the murmur of the breeze. Their kingdom had no hunger for war, no walls scarred with battle, only stone cottages that glowed with hearthlight, and castles built for shelter rather than for conquest. It was here, in this patient kingdom, that whispers began of a child unlike any other. A child not chosen by crowns or armies, but by something older, something softer, something written in the quiet hand of the stars. The villagers said he had been born beneath a dawn like no other, when the horizon blushed deep crimson, and the birds fell strangely silent, as though listening. Some swore the moon itself had dimmed for a moment, bowing her silver head in awe. Others said it was nothing so grand, that he was simply born in the silence of an ordinary night, when even the crickets held their breath. But all agreed on this. When the child's skin first touched the light, it bore upon it something wondrous. A map, faint but certain, traced in pale silver lines across his back and arms. It did not look drawn, nor carved, but rather grown, as though his very flesh remembered a place beyond Lunareth. Rivers curled where his veins should have been. Mountains rested where his shoulder blades rose. Valleys and paths stretched across him like forgotten secrets. His mother, cradling him close, named him Phoenix, not for fire, nor for flame, but for renewal, for the promise of something that endures. She whispered his name in tones soft as candlelight, her voice warmer than any hearth. And though she did not know what the map meant, she loved him not for mystery, but simply for being her child. Phoenix grew quietly, like a tree that does not rush toward the sky, but unfolds its leaves patiently, in tune with the rhythm of seasons. He walked barefoot through Lunareth's meadows, listening to the bees hum in their golden work. He lingered by streams, where minnows flickered like living sparks, and reeds bowed like weary guardians. At night, he sat outside the cottage door, gazing upward at the stars as if they were old friends, arranging themselves into patterns only he seemed to notice. When Phoenix was still young, Indigo noticed him. She was a healer of Lunareth, a woman whose presence was as steady as twilight. Her hair, deep as dusk, flowed around her shoulders, and her hands carried the scent of sage, lavender, and the faint smoke of hearth embers. Indigo lived at the edge of the village, where her cottage leaned against the arms of a willow tree. People came to her for salves, for teas, for quiet counsel when sorrow pressed too heavily on their hearts. She was not a woman of crowns or riches, but she carried wisdom like a lamp carried into darkness. One evening, passing the square, Indigo saw Phoenix sitting alone with the moonlight falling across his shoulders. There, under the silver glow, the map upon his skin shimmered faintly, as though the moon recognized it. Indigo paused, her breath caught in her chest. She did not speak then, for some truths ripen slowly, but she watched him with the stillness of someone beholding a secret too delicate to disturb. Not long after, another spirit of Lunareth crossed his path. Her name was Harmony, a wandering minstrel whose songs seemed spun from mist and starlight. Her lute was made of oak and string, her voice a river that never rushed yet always carried. Harmony drifted from village to village, her music softening nights, stitching together lonely hearts with sound. To some she was a traveler, to others a storyteller, but to all, she was a reminder that beauty could be as quiet as a lullaby sung to the dark. When Harmony first heard whispers of the child with the map, she thought them stories for firesides. But one night, as lanterns glowed in the square, she saw him for herself. Phoenix stood among the lights, and as the flames flickered across his arms, the markings upon his skin glowed faintly. Where others saw nothing unusual, Harmony felt as if she were looking at a song written without notes, lines that longed to be played, a melody yet unfinished. From that evening, 3 threads began to weave themselves together. Phoenix, the boy with the map; Indigo, the healer of twilight; and Harmony, the minstrel of wandering paths. Yet nothing happened in haste. There was no summons, no urgency, no command from the heavens. Only the slow unfolding of closeness, like 3 stars drifting nearer until they quietly form a constellation. Phoenix himself thought little of the markings. To him, they were neither gift nor burden, but simply part of him, as natural as freckles or the sound of his laughter. Sometimes he traced them absent-mindedly with his fingers, wondering if they might one day tell him where to go, but he felt no need to hurry. The villagers, too, treated him with gentle kindness. They offered him bread when he was hungry, warmth when he was cold, and smiles when he lingered in their doorways. He gave back what he could, his laughter, his presence, his patient listening. The night came, however, when Phoenix, Indigo, and Harmony sat together for the first time, not by plan but by the quiet pull of the stars. The moon was full that night, silver spilling across the rooftops and cobblestones. Phoenix sat by the fountain, trailing his hand in the cool water, watching ripples stretch outward like thoughts he could not name. Indigo arrived first, her cloak brushing gently across the stone. She carried no herbs, no vials, only herself. "You sit as though the water speaks to you," she murmured, settling beside him. Phoenix looked up, unstartled, his gaze calm as still ponds. "Perhaps it does," he answered, "but I do not yet know the language." Indigo smiled faintly, and for a moment, both of them watched the stars reflected in the water. The map upon Phoenix's arm shimmered softly, echoing the same stars above. Soon after, Harmony appeared, her lute strapped lightly across her back. She hesitated at the edge of the square, as though unsure if she was welcome, but Indigo lifted a hand, beckoning. "Sit with us," she said gently. "We are listening to what the night has to say." Harmony joined them, lowering herself onto the stones. She did not play her lute. Instead, she laid it across her lap and let her eyes rest on the marks across Phoenix's skin. "What do you hear, Phoenix?" she asked after a while. Phoenix's fingers drifted in the water, drawing circles. He thought long and slow before answering. Not words, not music, only quietness, as if something waits, but is not yet ready to be known. Harmony closed her eyes and nodded, as if this answer was enough. She leaned back, letting the moonlight kiss her face. Indigo tilted her head upward, too, and Phoenix, following their gaze, watched the stars above him. For a long time, the three said nothing more. They simply sat together, side by side, letting silence speak. The fountain's trickle became their song, the night their blanket, the stars their quiet company. And so the beginning was not loud, nor sudden, nor sharp. It was gentle, inevitable, and still. In the kingdom of Lunareth, under the moon's kind eye, the healer, the minstrel, and the child born with a map upon his skin sat together for the first time. And the world, as if pleased, sighed softly around them. Chapter 2. The Lullaby of the Meadow. The mornings in Lunareth were unlike those of other lands. Dawn never rushed in with fanfare. Instead, it arrived like a slow exhale, with colors that bled softly into one another. Peach into rose, rose into gold, gold into the gentle blue of day. The villagers awoke not with alarm, but with stretches, yawns, and the smell of bread baking, its warmth filling the air like a blanket spread across the valley. On one such morning, Phoenix wandered into the meadows beyond the village. He liked the fields when the dew still clung to the grass, sparkling like scattered gems. The meadow was alive with a stillness that wasn't empty, but full, a fullness made of bees stirring among blossoms, of crickets lingering in their last night song, of distant birds lifting themselves into the sky as though in prayer. Phoenix often came here when he wanted to feel the quiet hum of life. His bare feet pressed into the cool blades of grass, and he would pause often, closing his eyes, as if listening to a melody just beneath the surface of the world. On this morning, as the light spread gently, he felt that hum more strongly than ever. The map upon his skin seemed to tingle faintly, though Phoenix hardly noticed. To him, it was no more than the meadow itself reaching for him, as if grass and sky wished to greet him as kin. He sat upon a low rise in the field, where the view spilled outward, a sea of wildflowers swaying in the hush of a summer breeze. Purple clover nodded beside golden marigolds, and tiny white blossoms scattered like stars across the green. He leaned back, resting on his hands, and simply breathed. His breaths matched the rhythm of the meadow. Slow, steady, without weight or worry. The sun was warm but not hot, the breeze cool but not sharp. Time passed here without asking to be measured. It was there that Indigo found him. She walked softly through the grass, her cloak trailing dew, her steps quiet so as not to disturb the waking earth. She carried a small basket of herbs, though she had no need of them today. It was habit, the healer's way, to keep such things close. "You love the meadows," she said gently as she approached, her voice carrying the same calm as the field itself. Phoenix opened his eyes, looking up at her. "They sing," he said simply, "not with words, but with something that feels like words." Indigo smiled faintly, sitting beside him. "A lullaby," she whispered, setting her basket down. "The meadows of Lunareth sing to those who will listen. Most hurry past them, hearing nothing. But those who pause," she looked at him kindly, "they hear the earth's song." Phoenix tilted his head as though tasting the thought. "It is soft, like something meant to keep one from sadness." Indigo nodded, pleased. "You hear it truly." For a while, they sat together, letting the meadow's song fold around them. Bees moved lazily between blossoms, the air sweet with pollen. Above them, the sky deepened into a gentler blue, carrying with it the faint drift of clouds that seemed in no rush to move. Not long after, Harmony appeared, as though drawn by the same invisible thread. She carried her lute across her back, though she did not play it yet. Instead, she sat on the other side of Phoenix, lowering herself into the grass with the same reverence as if entering a cathedral. "Good morning," she said softly, her words more like a sigh than a greeting. "I heard music from afar." Phoenix looked at her with quiet puzzlement. "But I did not play." Harmony smiled, shaking her head. "Not from you, Phoenix. From here." She gestured to the meadow. "It is a place that hums its own tune." Indigo gave a low chuckle, warm and approving. "Then perhaps you and Phoenix hear the same thing." Harmony's eyes brightened with curiosity. She reached for her lute, fingers brushing the strings, but she did not strum yet. Instead, she leaned close to Phoenix. "Tell me, what do you hear most clearly?" Phoenix thought for a long moment. He glanced at the flowers swaying, the bees dipping, the clouds drifting. He touched his arm lightly, where the faint silver lines of the map glimmered. "It is as though all of it is waiting," he said softly. "Waiting but not impatient. Waiting with kindness, with hope." Harmony closed her eyes and pressed her lute gently to her chest. "Then I will play what you hear." Her fingers moved at last, coaxing sound from the strings. The melody was not loud nor quick. It was as soft as grass stirred by wind, as slow as the sun climbing the sky. Each note lingered like dew, falling gently, shimmering, then fading into the air. The music wrapped around them, weaving itself with the meadow's hum until it seemed there was no line between the two. Phoenix leaned back, eyes half closed, the map upon his skin glowing faintly under the light. Indigo's hands rested upon her lap, her breathing matching the rhythm of the tune. Harmony's song carried them into stillness deeper than silence. Stillness that was not empty, but full of calm. It seemed, for a moment, as though Lunareth itself listened. The breeze quieted, the bees slowed their dance, even the birds paused their flight. The whole meadow tilted its head toward the music, as though recognizing its own voice echoed back. When Harmony finished, she let her hands fall, the last note dissolving into the air like a sigh. The three of them sat for a long while, not needing to speak, not wishing to disturb the hush they had created together. At last, Indigo spoke, her words low and steady. "The meadow sings. You have given it words." Harmony shook her head gently. "No, I only borrowed its voice for a while. The meadow's song is older than I am." Phoenix touched the grass beside him, his fingers brushing the blades as though to thank them. "Older than all of us," he murmured. The three sat until the sun was high, until shadows grew short. The meadow did not ask them to leave, but eventually their bodies reminded them of time, of hunger, of thirst, of the small needs of the day. They rose slowly, carrying the stillness of the meadow with them, each in their own way. As they walked back toward the village, Phoenix felt the map upon his skin warm faintly, as though stirred by the music they had shared. He did not question it. He only walked, bare feet pressing into the soft earth, carrying with him the lullaby of the meadow, which seemed now to live in his very breath. And so, without urgency, without expectation, a bond was quietly born. The healer of twilight, the minstrel of wandering songs, and the child with the map upon his skin had sat together in the meadow's embrace, and Lunareth itself seemed to hum with approval. Chapter 3: The Lantern by the River. Evenings in Lunareth arrived like gentle hands closing a book. The sun lowered slowly, never in a hurry, its light deepening from gold to amber, then to rose, then to violet, until finally silver moonlight spilled across the land. Lanterns were lit in the village, each flame glowing soft and low, as though in conversation with the stars above. On one such evening, Phoenix wandered toward the river. The air was cool but kind, brushing against his skin with the gentleness of silk. Crickets had begun their chorus, and the water itself moved like liquid glass, carrying reflections of the moon in steady ripples. Phoenix often visited the river when he wished to think, or perhaps more truly, when he wished not to think at all. The water's sound smoothed his thoughts until they no longer felt heavy, but drifted like leaves upon the current. He carried with him a small lantern, its flame flickering in the growing dusk, casting a warm circle of light around him. He sat on the bank, setting the lantern beside him. The glow caught the silver traces of the map upon his arm, making them shimmer faintly, like threads of moonlight woven into his skin. Phoenix leaned forward, watching the river, and felt himself falling into its rhythm. Each wave rose and fell like a slow breath. Each ripple spoke of journeys made without rush. After a time, footsteps approached, soft, deliberate, and unhurried. It was Indigo. She carried no basket this time, only a folded cloak draped loosely around her shoulders. She paused when she saw Phoenix by the water, her face calm but warmed by the sight of him. "You bring a lantern," she said, her voice quiet as the river itself. Phoenix turned his head slightly. "So the water has company," he replied. Indigo smiled faintly and lowered herself to sit beside him. The two of them watched in silence for a while, their gazes resting on the river as though it were telling them a story too delicate to interrupt. The lantern flame swayed in the breeze, its reflection stretching long across the ripples. Soon after, Harmony appeared, as if drawn by the glow. She carried her lute, though she did not hold it as if she meant to play. Instead, she cradled it softly against her, like one carries a friend. She approached without words and sat on Phoenix's other side. For a while, none of them spoke. The three of them simply sat by the river, the lantern flame between them, the moonlight upon the water, the crickets singing faintly in the grass. Time did not demand their attention, and so they let it pass unnoticed, as one lets wind move across the skin. At last, Harmony spoke, her tone thoughtful. "There is something about rivers," she said, eyes following the current. "They carry things away, but they do not seem sad. They are always leaving and always arriving, both at once." Phoenix dipped his fingers into the water, letting the coolness embrace his skin. "They wait for no one," he said softly, "yet they never feel cruel." Indigo inclined her head, her gaze steady. "Because they teach us to let go, to drift when it is time." The lantern flickered, as though agreeing. The three of them leaned closer to its warmth, listening to the river's endless song. Phoenix, tracing circles in the water, noticed again the way his markings glimmered faintly in the light. For the first time, he wondered, not with urgency, but with curiosity, if the river recognized him, if the map upon his skin was kin to the lines carved across the earth. "Do you ever feel," he asked slowly, "that we are all following rivers we cannot see?" Harmony's fingers touched her lute, though she did not play. "Yes," she answered simply. "Some rivers run inside us. Some flow across our skin. Some sing to us, though we do not yet know the words." Indigo placed her hand gently upon the grass. "And some carry us whether we choose to follow or not. But none are cruel. Rivers do not hurry us. They only invite. The lantern's glow deepened as the night grew darker. Its flame was small, but steady, as if made of patience. Phoenix leaned closer to it, resting his chin upon his knees. "It feels safe here," he murmured. And it was true. There was no urgency at the river's edge, no task, no expectation. Only the sound of flowing water, the warmth of the lantern, the company of kind souls. Harmony, at last, lifted her lute. She strummed a few notes, so softly that they seemed to rise from the river itself rather than from her strings. The melody drifted between them like mist, weaving with the sound of the water until it was impossible to tell where music ended and river song began. Phoenix closed his eyes, breathing slowly. The lines on his skin glowed faintly, warmed by the lantern's light, as though stirred awake by the mingling of music and water. Indigo noticed, her eyes soft but thoughtful. She said nothing, for the night was not a time for questions, but for stillness. The music faded, but the hush it left behind was fuller than silence. The lantern flame swayed once more, casting shadows that danced along the grass. A cool breeze stirred, brushing their cheeks, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and wildflowers. "Let us leave the lantern here tonight," Indigo suggested quietly. Phoenix blinked, turning to her. "Leave it?" "Yes," she said. "Let it burn by the river, so the water will have company long after we are gone." Harmony smiled, her eyes soft as candlelight, a gentle gift for the river's endless song. Phoenix considered this, then nodded. He set the lantern more firmly upon the bank, making sure its flame was steady. They watched it together for a while longer, glowing warmly against the silver current. When at last they rose to leave, the lantern remained behind, its light joining with the stars reflected in the water. As they walked back toward the village, the river carried their reflections for a time, until distance softened them into ripples. That night, in his dreams, Phoenix saw the river flowing not across Lunareth, but across his own skin. The lines of the map shimmered like streams of light, carrying him gently forward. He did not know where. He did not need to. It was enough simply to drift. And so, the lantern by the river burned through the night, a small, steady flame left as a gift, keeping the water company until dawn. Chapter 4. The Dream Beneath the Willow. There was a willow tree in Lunareth unlike any other. It stood at the edge of the meadow, where the grass met the slow-moving bend of the river. Its branches hung low, like curtains of green silk, brushing the water with every sigh of wind. To sit beneath this willow was to step into another world, softer and quieter, as if time itself bent its head and hushed its voice. Phoenix often came to the willow when he wished for rest, and the villagers spoke of it as though it were alive with kindness. Mothers carried their children there, believing the tree's shade calmed restless hearts. Shepherds leaned against its trunk after long days, feeling its roots steady beneath them. Minstrels, too, found songs in its branches, melodies whispered through its endless weeping leaves. On a warm afternoon, Phoenix made his way to the willow. The sky was a pale blue, gentle and endless, with only a few clouds drifting like slow ships. The air smelled of wildflowers and sun-warmed grass. His bare feet pressed softly into the earth as he walked, the map upon his skin hidden but always present, shimmering faintly when the light kissed it just so. When he reached the willow, Phoenix ducked beneath the curtain of leaves. The world outside dimmed instantly, softened by the tree's embrace. Inside, it was cool and green, with patterns of dappled light scattered upon the ground. The branches swayed gently, whispering as though they were telling secrets to the breeze. Phoenix lowered himself onto the grass and leaned back against the trunk. The wood was solid and kind, the roots pressing up against him like the steady arm of an old friend. His eyelids grew heavy almost at once. The hush of the willow was a lullaby of its own, and before long, Phoenix slipped into dreams. In his dream, he was walking again, but not through Lunareth. He wandered across wide fields where the grass shimmered silver and rivers glowed like threads of starlight. The map upon his skin shone brightly now, guiding him forward without effort. He felt no fear, no urgency, only the certainty that wherever it led, it would be gentle. He saw mountains in the distance, their peaks brushed with clouds, yet they did not seem daunting. They looked as though they were resting, as though even the tallest stones of the earth had learned patience. Birds wheeled above, their wings glowing faintly as if made of dawnlight. He felt the breeze against his skin, cool and kind, and followed where it beckoned. But always, even in the dream, he sensed the willow, its branches stretching into this other world, swaying gently as though it too belonged to both waking and sleep. As he walked, he heard music, not loud, not urgent, but a tune woven into the air like threads of mist. He turned and saw Harmony, walking beside him in the dream. Her lute was slung across her back, though she was not playing it. The music came anyway, soft and endless, as if her very presence filled the dream with sound. "You dream deeply," she said, her voice as soft as her songs. Phoenix blinked, not surprised to see her. "Do you walk here too?" he asked. "Sometimes," Harmony answered. "Dreams are meadows, and some meadows open their gates to more than one traveler." Together they walked in silence for a time, the willow's branches swaying gently around them, though no wind stirred. Soon, another figure appeared in the dream. Indigo stepped forward, her cloak flowing behind her like twilight. She carried no herbs, no vials, only the calm strength that always followed her. She reached out a hand, brushing Phoenix's arm, and the map upon his skin glowed brighter at her touch. "You carry paths," Indigo said softly, "but not all paths must be walked at once." Phoenix looked down at the glowing lines. "Do you know where they lead?" Indigo shook her head gently. "That is for time to reveal. Maps do not speak in haste." The dream unfolded without edges, without urgency. The three of them walked together across silver fields, listening to the song of silence, the steady hush of the willow that seemed to weave itself through everything. The mountains never grew closer nor farther. The rivers never narrowed nor widened. It was not a journey of distance, but of being. When Phoenix woke, the willow's branches still swayed above him, their shadows dancing across his skin. The marks of the map shimmered faintly in the dappled light. He felt as though no time had passed at all, and yet as though he had traveled far. Indigo was there, seated nearby, her eyes half closed as though in meditation. She must have joined him while he slept, her presence steady and grounding. She looked up as he stirred. "You dreamed," she said gently. Phoenix nodded. "Of rivers and mountains, and of you, and harmony." Indigo's lips curved into a soft smile. "Then the willow shared its gift with you. It weaves dreams not for escape, but for rest." As if on cue, Harmony's voice floated through the leaves. She appeared, stepping softly beneath the branches, her lute cradled in her arms. She seemed unsurprised to find them both there, as though the tree itself had guided her. "You left a lantern by the river last night," she said, settling into the grass. "This morning, the villagers said its flame was still alive. They thought it a blessing." Phoenix's gaze softened, recalling the little light. Perhaps the river was pleased. Harmony strummed a gentle chord, letting the sound blend with the whisper of the willow. The river, the meadow, the willow, they all seem to notice us, don't they? Indigo nodded. Because we notice them. The earth always answers those who listen. The three of them sat in the willow's embrace, the hush of the leaves around them, the cool shade sheltering them like a mother's arms. Harmony played softly. Indigo closed her eyes, and Phoenix leaned against the trunk once more. The dream he had walked still lingered within him. Not a command, not a puzzle to solve, but a gift of stillness, a reminder that paths need not be hurried, that journeys may unfold in their own time. And so, beneath the willow he rested. The lantern by the river still burned. The meadow still sang. The stars would return tonight. And all was enough. Chapter 5. The Hearth of Quiet Stories. Evening in Lunareth was a gentle thing. The sun sank not with haste but with grace, painting the sky in ribbons of rose, amber, and violet. The air cooled slowly, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and faint wood smoke drifting from chimneys across the valley. Villagers began to gather inside, shutters drawn softly against the night air. Lanterns flickering awake one by one like new stars. In the great hall of Lady Celine's manor, the hearth fire was lit. Its flames glowed low and steady, not leaping wildly but burning with a quiet, deep warmth that seemed to breathe with the rhythm of the room itself. The stones of the fireplace held centuries of soot, but rather than seeming worn, they seemed softened, as though every spark and every sigh had woven them into something enduring. Phoenix entered with Indigo and Harmony. The hush of the night followed them in, but it was quickly replaced by the glow of the hearth, wrapping them in its gentle light. Chairs and benches were arranged in a wide circle, not in formality but in welcome, and villagers were already gathering. Children leaned sleepily against their mothers. Elders rested their hands on walking sticks, and travelers who had found their way to Lunareth that day sat with grateful eyes, soaking in the warmth. Phoenix lowered himself onto a wooden stool near the fire. The map upon his skin was hidden beneath his sleeves, but somehow the flames seemed to know it was there, flickering with a rhythm that matched the soft hum of its glow. He did not speak, for there was no need. Here, in this circle, words rose slowly and gently, like sparks drifting into the air. It was an elder who spoke first, her voice like worn silk. She told of a night long ago when the stars themselves seemed to gather above Lunareth, shining so brightly that the river reflected them as though it were a second sky. She said she remembered sitting as a child, staring at that double firmament, and feeling as though she were held between heaven and earth. The villagers listened, not with wide-eyed wonder, but with the soft attention of those who have learned to savor the weight of each word. The fire popped gently, punctuating her story with tiny notes of warmth. When she finished, silence lingered for a time, not empty but full, like a blanket laid across the room. Harmony strummed her lute then, not with flourish but with tenderness, each note falling like a drop of honey into tea. Her song was not of triumph or sorrow but of stillness, the kind of melody that fills the spaces between words, carrying them further without crowding them. The villagers leaned into the sound, their shoulders relaxing, their breaths deepening. Children closed their eyes, some drifting toward sleep, their dreams guided by the gentle cadence. When the music faded, Indigo added her own kind of story, not told in words, but in scents and touches. From her satchel, she withdrew a bundle of dried herbs, crushed them gently in her palms, and sprinkled them into the fire. A curl of smoke rose, carrying the fragrance of lavender, rosemary, and something faintly sweet, like distant blossoms. The hall seemed to breathe it in, the smoke twining with the crackle of the fire. It felt as though the hearth itself had drawn closer, as though the walls and roof bent in protectively around those gathered. Phoenix closed his eyes for a moment, letting the warmth sink deep into his bones. His mind wandered, not to worries or questions, but to the softness of the present. The fire's glow, the sound of harmony strings still humming faintly in the air, the gentle murmur of voices sharing memories not for answers, but for comfort. When he opened his eyes again, a child was watching him. The boy, no more than 6 or 7, had slipped from his mother's lap and settled closer to Phoenix, his small face lit by the fire. "Do you have a story?" the boy asked, his voice more curiosity than demand. Phoenix hesitated, unsure, but Harmony smiled gently at him, and Indigo nodded with quiet encouragement. So he spoke, not of the map on his skin, not of distant rivers or mountains, but of something simple. He told of the lantern he had left by the riverbank, how its flame had survived the night, and how, when he returned in the morning, the water seemed to glow as if it carried the lantern's blessing. He spoke slowly, the words falling like gentle rain, and though it was not a grand tale, the villagers listened as though it were. When he finished, the boy's eyes shone. "The river liked you," he said softly, and then, satisfied, curled up again at his mother's side, already drifting into dreams. The fire burned lower as the night wore on, but it never faded. The circle of villagers remained, each story a thread woven into the warm fabric of the evening. Some spoke of gardens that bloomed early, of bread baked perfectly golden, of dreams that left them feeling lighter than when they slept. No story was too small, no memory too simple. Here, everything was held as worthy, for it came from the quiet rhythm of their lives. At last, Lady Selene herself spoke. Her voice was gentle but carried a weight of presence, like the stillness of a deep pool. "Stories," she said, "are hearths of their own. They warm us when we have wandered cold roads. They remind us that every breath we take belongs to something larger, something steady." The villagers nodded, the firelight flickering across their faces. Outside, the moon had risen high, silvering the thatched roofs and cobbled streets of Lunareth. Inside, the hearth glowed like a heart, steady and warm. Phoenix felt himself sinking deeper into peace, the map on his skin quiet, its glow dimmed not from absence but from rest. He thought of the willow, of the meadow, of the lantern by the river, all threads of the same tapestry, all waiting, all patient. He let the warmth fold over him, and in that moment he knew, not every path needed walking tonight. Some journeys were made in circles, by the fire, in the company of gentle souls and endless stories. The flames cracked softly, a final story of their own, and the hall hushed into silence, not empty but whole. And so the night deepened in Lunareth, beneath stars that shone steadily, like watchful guardians of the peace below. Chapter 6. The Garden of Still Waters. There was a place in Lunareth that even the busiest hearts could not resist. A hidden garden, tended not by hands but by time and patience. It lay just beyond the willow grove, tucked behind a low stone wall that moss had softened over centuries. Those who entered passed beneath an archway of ivy and found themselves in the Garden of Still Waters. The garden was simple, yet endless in its peace. Pools of clear water spread like mirrors across the earth, their edges framed by soft grasses and stones worn smooth by seasons. Lilies floated gently on the surface, their white petals opening to the sky, their green leaves wide as small plates. The water never rushed, never rippled with haste. It held the reflections of sky, tree, and star as though it wished to cradle them forever. Phoenix had heard of this garden from whispers in the village, but it was Harmony who led him there one soft morning. Her steps were light, her lute strapped across her back, though she did not play it. Indigo walked at Phoenix's other side, carrying a small bundle of herbs and a pouch of seeds, for she never arrived in a garden empty-handed. The arch of ivy parted easily as they passed, and the garden welcomed them without a sound. Instantly the air changed, as though the world beyond had dimmed into a softer shade. The fragrance of wet earth, water, and faint blossoms filled the air, making even their breaths slower, calmer. Phoenix paused at the edge of one of the pools. The map upon his skin glowed faintly as his reflection met him in the water. The lines seemed to shimmer more brightly in the mirrored surface, as if the pool itself recognized them. He reached out, trailing his fingers across the water's surface, watching the ripples spread. "They say these pools are like memory," Harmony whispered, crouching at his side. "They hold what they are given, but they never rush to change it. What falls into them remains, softened, stilled." Indigo knelt near another pool, scattering a pinch of seeds along its bank. "And yet," she added, "they also give. Every plant here has grown because of the water's patience." The three of them sat together, letting silence be their companion. The pools reflected the sky above, where clouds drifted slowly, painting gentle shadows across the water. A dragonfly skimmed across the surface, its wings catching light like shards of glass. Somewhere, a bird called softly, its song lingering in the stillness like a thread woven into the air. Phoenix felt his chest grow lighter, as though the garden had taken the weight of unspoken questions from him. The map upon his skin no longer pulsed with mystery but rested quietly, like lines of ink drying on parchment. For the first time, he did not wonder where it led. He only breathed. Harmony broke the quiet with the soft strum of her lute. The sound was delicate, like ripples meeting ripples, blending with the hush of the garden. She played slowly, each note a drop of sound falling into the still pools. Phoenix closed his eyes, and in the darkness behind his lids, he saw not distant mountains or shining rivers, but the gentle mirror of the water itself. Indigo's voice joined, low and calm, reciting words that were more prayer than poem. "Water remembers, yet it does not cling. Water receives, yet it does not bind. In its stillness, all things are held." Her words fell into the garden as though they had been waiting for them, and the pools seemed to deepen, the lilies unfolding wider, as if in thanks. Phoenix listened, his breath rising and falling with the rhythm of her words, with the hush of Harmony's strings. He leaned back against the mossy wall and let the moment seep into him. When he opened his eyes again, he saw a lantern, one he had not placed, floating gently on the nearest pool. Its flame was small, golden, steady, and the water bore it as though it were weightless. He pointed, and Harmony smiled. "Many leave lanterns here," she explained. "Some for their dreams, some for their ancestors, some simply because they wished the garden to have another light. Phoenix reached toward it but did not touch. The lantern drifted slowly, its flame reflecting twice, once above, once below, as if the water itself carried its twin. The garden was not a place of answers, he realized, but a place where questions grew quiet enough to rest. The map on his skin no longer demanded understanding. Instead, it lay calmly, as if soothed by the reflection of the pools. They spent the afternoon in silence. Indigo pressed her herbs into the soil, Harmony hummed without words, and Phoenix traced shapes in the water with a fallen twig. The pools accepted everything without hurry, holding each small gift as though it had always belonged. As evening fell, the garden shifted. The sky turned soft lavender, and the first stars appeared, trembling in the reflection of the pools. Fireflies rose from the grasses, their lights flickering gently, weaving through the willows and lilies. The lantern flame glowed brighter against the dark, and the still water mirrored every spark as though the garden itself were made of stars. Phoenix lay back on the grass, the cool earth beneath him, the night sky above. For a moment, he felt no boundary between the two, as though he lay inside the pools themselves, floating in reflections of stars and silence. Harmony sat nearby, her song fading into the hush of crickets. Indigo rested with her eyes closed, her breathing deep and even. Time stretched and softened. The night held them like a cradle. When they finally rose to leave, Phoenix looked back through the ivy arch one last time. The lantern still floated, its flame unwavering, mirrored 100-fold in the still pools. It looked less like fire and more like a heart, steady, luminous, patient. He whispered a quiet thanks, though he did not know to whom. The garden, perhaps, the stars, the water, or perhaps simply to the stillness itself. And then, with Harmony and Indigo at his side, he stepped out into the night of Lunareth, carrying the hush of the garden of still waters within him. Chapter 7. The Pilgrim's Bell. In Lunareth, the passage of time was not marked by clocks or by urgency, but by the ringing of bells. There was one bell in particular, known simply as the Pilgrim's Bell, that carried its tone across the valley. It hung in a small stone tower on a hill not far from the village, and though it was not large, its sound traveled with a clarity that no distance could soften. The bell rang only 3 times each day, once at dawn, once at dusk, and once at midnight. It was not a command, not a call to labor or to arms, but a reminder. Its voice drifted like a long, gentle breath, telling all who heard it that they were part of something steady, that time was a river flowing quietly beneath their feet. Phoenix had heard the bell many times before, its tone a familiar presence in the rhythm of Lunareth, but he had never seen it rung up close. So one afternoon, Harmony suggested they climb the hill and visit the tower. Indigo agreed, carrying her satchel of herbs as always, and together the 3 made their way along the winding path. The walk itself was peaceful. The path curved through meadows, where grasses brushed against their legs, and the air carried the scent of clover and thyme. The sky was pale, washed with late afternoon gold, and the sun lingered lazily above the horizon. Phoenix felt his steps fall in rhythm with the rustle of the grass, as though the land itself set the pace. When they reached the base of the hill, they paused. The tower stood at the top, small and square, its stones weathered but strong. Ivy climbed its sides, and the bell itself, though hidden within, seemed to hum faintly, as if it never truly rested. The climb was not steep, but they took it slowly, savoring each step. Indigo stopped now and then to touch the herbs that grew wild along the path. Sage, yarrow, wild mint, murmuring their names under her breath like blessings. Harmony hummed softly, her voice weaving with the wind, creating a melody so subtle it seemed to rise from the earth itself. Phoenix listened, his heart quiet, his map hidden but still glowing faintly in response to the journey. At last, they reached the tower. Its wooden door was simple, carved only with the shape of a circle, the symbol of time without beginning or end. The door creaked gently as Harmony pushed it open, and inside they found a spiral staircase, winding upward into shadow. The air smelled of stone and cedar, cool and grounding. They climbed slowly, their footsteps echoing softly against the walls. The light from the narrow windows fell in stripes across the steps, painting their path in shifting gold and shadow. By the time they reached the top, the sun had dipped lower, setting the horizon ablaze with warm hues of amber and rose. The bell hung before them, suspended by a beam of dark wood. It was not grand or gilded, but simple, its bronze surface darkened with age. Yet it seemed alive, as though it carried within it the breath of every dawn, dusk, and midnight it had ever sung. Phoenix stepped closer, placing a hand on its side. The metal was cool, yet he thought he could feel a faint vibration, as though the bell's memory pulsed quietly beneath his palm. Harmony rested her lute against the wall and looked up at it with soft eyes. Indigo lit a small bundle of sage and let the smoke curl around the bell, her lips moving in silent words of gratitude. As the last light of day began to fade, the three of them waited. The bell was due to ring at dusk, and though they could not see who or what would set it in motion, they felt a quiet anticipation. The air grew still. The sun slipped below the horizon. The first stars appeared, shy but steady. And then, with no visible hand, the bell moved. Its tone rang out slowly, deeply, like the earth exhaling. The sound filled the tower, rolled down the hill, drifted across the valley. Phoenix closed his eyes, and the vibration seemed to hum through his chest, through the map on his skin, through every thought and breath. It was not loud. It did not command. Simply was. Harmony placed her hand lightly on Phoenix's arm, grounding him in the sound. Indigo bowed her head, letting the tone wash over her. Each peal stretched long and low, carrying no rush, no insistence, only patience. When the final note faded into silence, the world seemed changed, not because anything had moved, but because everything felt more deeply itself. The grasses still swayed, the stars still glowed, the river still murmured far below, but all of it seemed bound together by the memory of the bell's song. Phoenix opened his eyes, breathing slowly. "It feels like time breathing," he said softly. Harmony smiled faintly. "That is exactly what it is." Indigo placed her hand over her heart. "And we breathe with it." They lingered in the tower until night settled fully. The moon rose, bathing the stones in silver light, and the bell stood silent once more, resting in its patience. Phoenix touched it one last time before they left, whispering a thank you he could not quite explain. Descending the hill was slower than climbing it. The stars overhead glittered in the deepening sky, mirrored faintly by the river below. The villagers' lanterns twinkled in the valley, small but steady, each one like an echo of the bell's tone. When they reached the bottom, Harmony paused, strumming her lute gently. She played a slow, resonant note, letting it fade before playing another, as though she were imitating the bell itself. Phoenix listened, feeling the two sounds, memory and echo, blend in his chest. Indigo added her voice, low and steady, weaving words that matched the rhythm. The bell rings, not to call, but to remind. In its sound, we remember to breathe. The three of them walked back toward the village, the quiet night unfolding around them. The path glowed with moonlight, the grasses bowed in the soft wind, and above, the stars spread endlessly, unhurried, eternal. As they returned to Lady Celine's manor, Phoenix felt as though the bell's tone still lingered within him. Not a command, not a burden, but a hum, steady, grounding, patient. And when he lay down that night, beneath the roof that sheltered him, he dreamed not of distant mountains or glowing rivers, but of the bell's song. A sound without edges, a reminder that time itself could be gentle. Chapter 8. The Night of Falling Stars. The people of Lunareth always looked forward to one night each year, a night when the heavens seemed to open and scatter silver threads across the sky. They called it the Night of Falling Stars, and though no one knew why it came, the villagers believed it was a blessing. They said each streak of light was a dream gently released by the world above, offered as a gift to those who watched with open hearts. That evening, the village quieted earlier than usual. Windows glowed with lanterns, doors swung open, and families wandered toward the wide meadow just beyond the willow grove. Blankets were spread across the grass, baskets of bread and fruit were carried along, and the air hummed with a calm anticipation. Phoenix, Harmony, and Indigo walked together, their steps slow, their voices hushed. The meadow stretched wide beneath the evening sky, already dotted with the first faint stars. The air smelled of summer, wildflowers and warm earth cooling after the day's sun. A gentle breeze stirred, carrying with it the sound of the river, steady and low like the heartbeat of the valley. They chose a spot near the center of the field, where the grass was softest and the view unbroken. Phoenix lay on his back, his arms folded behind his head, and stared upward. Harmony sat cross-legged nearby, her lute resting in her lap, her fingers absently plucking soft notes as if in conversation with the darkening sky. Indigo stretched out a shawl, laying small sprigs of herbs upon it, lavender, sage, chamomile, not for ritual, but simply to share their fragrance with the night. The villagers settled in around them, though no one spoke loudly. It was as if the meadow itself had asked for stillness. Children pointed at the first stars, their whispers carrying more wonder than shouts ever could. Elders leaned close together, their faces calm, as if this yearly event was less spectacle than reunion. As the last light of day faded, the sky deepened into a velvet black, scattered with silver points. Then, with no warning, the first star fell. It streaked across the heavens, a line of white fire that lingered for a heartbeat before fading. The meadow exhaled softly in unison, the sound like a sigh carried on the breeze. Another star followed, then another. Soon, the sky was alive with motion, threads of light weaving across the dark, some quick and sharp, others slow and graceful, trailing long silver tails. Phoenix watched in silence, his chest rising and falling with the rhythm of the heavens. The map upon his skin glowed faintly, though he did not look at it. Tonight, there was no need to search, no need to question. The stars above mirrored the lines within him, and for once, both seemed content simply to shine. Harmony's lute offered a soft accompaniment, her song blending so seamlessly with the sight that it seemed the stars themselves were answering her. Each note lingered just long enough to echo the falling lights, fading only when the next streak lit the sky. Indigo, seated beside Phoenix, closed her eyes and whispered words carried by the wind. They were not incantations but blessings, each one spoken with a gentleness that matched the moment. For every light that falls, may peace rise. For every dream released, may rest be found. For every path unseen, may patience guide. The meadow listened, the stars listened, and Phoenix felt the words settle within him like warm stones, grounding him beneath the endless sweep of sky. Hours passed, though time felt softened, stretched thin by wonder. The stars continued to fall, not hurried, not chaotic, but steady, as though the universe itself wished to give each dream its own space. Some villagers dozed lightly on the grass, their breaths slow and steady. Children, lulled by the lullaby of light, curled against their parents, slipping into gentle sleep even as the heavens danced above them. Phoenix remained awake, his eyes wide but soft. He felt no weariness. Instead, he felt held, as though the stars above, the earth below, and the quiet company beside him had formed a cradle in which he could rest without question. Harmony leaned closer, her voice barely more than a breath. "What do you see in them?" Phoenix thought for a long moment before answering. "Not destinations, not signs, just kindness. The stars are kind tonight." Indigo opened her eyes, her gaze steady on the sky. "They remind us that even what falls does so gently." The three of them sat in silence once more, each word swallowed tenderly by the meadow. The stars fell on, unbothered by their quiet, perhaps even grateful for it. At midnight, the pilgrim's bell rang from its tower on the hill. Its tone drifted through the valley, slow and deep, mingling with the sight of the falling stars. The sound did not interrupt the sky's song but joined it, another thread woven into the tapestry of the night. Phoenix closed his eyes as the bell echoed through him. He did not see the stars then, but he felt them, the glow of their descent mirrored by the steady hum of the bell. The map upon his skin pulsed gently, not demanding, only reminding him that he was part of this rhythm, part of this quiet weaving of light and time. When he opened his eyes again, the meadow was glowing faintly. The lanterns brought by villagers shimmered softly among the grass, blending with the stars above and the fireflies that had risen to dance. It was as though heaven and earth had mirrored one another completely, leaving no boundary between the two. The night passed like that, slow, tender, filled with silver. And when at last the falling stars grew fewer, the villagers rose quietly, gathering their children and their baskets, their blankets and their dreams. No one spoke of wishes, no one rushed to leave. They carried the peace with them, as if the stars had tucked a small fragment of their light into every heart. Phoenix lingered a little longer, lying back against the grass until the first pale light of dawn brushed the horizon. Only then did he rise, stretching, his skin aglow with the faintest shimmer of the night's memory. Harmony touched his shoulder lightly. Indigo offered him a sprig of lavender, and together they walked back toward the village. Behind them, the meadow remained, quiet, endless, waiting patiently for the stars to fall again another year. And above, the last two streaks of light crossed paths before fading, like threads tying the night closed with a gentle knot. Chapter 9: The Lanterns by the River. The morning after the night of falling stars, the village of Lunareth did not wake with haste. Instead, it stretched slowly into the day, like a cat curling toward sunlight. Windows opened to let in fresh air scented with dew. Wooden shutters creaked softly as they swung wide, and gentle voices drifted across the lanes. No clamor, no bustle, only the quiet rhythm of people moving with unhurried ease. Phoenix stirred later than usual, the memory of the starry sky still glowing faintly in his chest. He sat by the window of Harmony's small home, watching the way sunlight glanced off the thatched rooftops. Beside him, Harmony was kneading dough for bread, her movements steady, her smile unspoken but visible in the corners of her eyes. Indigo sat cross-legged on the floor, weaving sprigs of dried herbs into slender cords that would be used that evening. For though the stars had given their gift the night before, another tradition awaited. The people of Lunareth would gather again at the riverbank, lighting lanterns and sending them afloat, one by one. Each lantern carried no burden of wish or prayer. It was not a plea to the heavens, but a quiet offering back to the world, a way of saying thank you. Phoenix rose at last, stretching slowly, and asked in a voice softened by sleep, "Why lanterns? Why the river?" Harmony dusted her hands with flour, her eyes glimmering. "Because rivers carry what we cannot. They know how to move gently without question." Indigo lifted her gaze from the herbs. "And the lanterns remind us that light belongs everywhere, above us in the sky and here with us on earth. Sending them away is not losing them. It is letting them find another home." Phoenix thought about this as the day unfolded. The village moved steadily but softly, preparing in small ways. Carpenters shaped thin frames of wood, smooth and light. Children folded sheets of oiled paper into squares and circles, their fingers sticky with paste. Women tied the frames together with twine while men trimmed reeds to act as anchors. Everywhere Phoenix looked, he saw gentle industry, hands working not with urgency but with calm devotion. By the time the sun lowered, painting the hills with shades of amber and rose, hundreds of lanterns had been made. Their paper skins gleamed faintly, as if eager to glow. The villagers gathered in groups, carrying them carefully toward the river. The river itself awaited with patience, its surface reflecting the hues of twilight. It moved at a pace that matched the people, slow, never hurried, always certain. Trees arched over its banks, their branches dipping low to watch, as though the forest itself wished to join the ritual. Phoenix walked with Harmony and Indigo at his side, his lantern held close. Its frame was small, its paper thin, but the moment felt weighty in the gentlest of ways. They reached the water's edge where stones smoothed by years of flow waited underfoot. The first lanterns were lit. Small flames flickered within them, steadying as the breeze quieted to watch. Then, one by one, the villagers released them onto the water. It began slowly, just a few lights drifting golden circles upon the darkening surface. Then more followed, and more, until the river glowed as if carrying a stream of stars born from human hands. The lanterns swayed gently, some close together, some drifting apart, but all moving forward. Children gasped in delight, their voices hushed to whispers. Elders closed their eyes, breathing deeply, the glow reflected in their faces. Couples leaned close, their hands brushing as they set lanterns free. Phoenix crouched at the bank, holding his lantern carefully above the water. For a moment he hesitated, not from fear but from reverence. He felt the map upon his skin stir faintly, as if the lines within him longed to join the flow of light. Harmony knelt beside him, her lantern already glowing. "It doesn't matter where it goes," she said softly. "The river will carry it kindly." Indigo stood just behind them, her shawl brushing the grass, her voice a whisper. Let it drift like a thought too tender to hold, but too lovely to forget. Phoenix lowered his lantern to the surface. The flame inside steadied, and then, with the softest push, he let it go. It bobbed once, twice, then slid into the current, joining the golden procession. He watched until it was no longer distinct from the others, until it was only one among many, glowing peacefully as it drifted toward places unseen. The ritual lasted until the last lantern was set free. By then, the river had become a ribbon of light, weaving through the valley, carrying warmth into the deepening night. The villagers lingered, seated on the grass or stones, speaking softly or not at all. Some sang in low voices, simple tunes that needed no words. Harmony lifted her lute and strummed just enough to match the rhythm of the current. Phoenix leaned back against the earth, watching the lanterns drift farther and farther, until they were only small flickers blending into the horizon. He thought of the stars the night before, and how now the river mirrored the heavens. Above, the sky stretched wide and endless. Below, the river stretched soft and certain. Between them, he felt held. Indigo's voice reached him again, a thread of sound. Do you see how the lanterns do not hurry? They know the river will take them where they must go. Phoenix nodded slowly. They trust the current. Harmony plucked a gentle chord. And so can we. The night deepened. Slowly, villagers began to rise, gathering their children, carrying baskets home. The meadow quieted. The banks softened to stillness. Yet the glow of the river remained, even as distance swallowed it. Phoenix stayed longer, watching until the last lantern disappeared into the horizon. His heart felt steady, his breaths even. He traced a line upon his arm, one of the many that formed the map upon his skin. For once, it did not feel like a puzzle to solve, but simply like a lantern. Light carried within him, meant to drift, meant to glow. When at last they walked back toward the village, the three of them said little. Their silence was not empty but full, like a song carried inward. Above them, the stars watched. Beside them, the river moved. Within them, light lingered. And so the night closed with lanterns and peace, both drifting endlessly on currents far too gentle to ever be lost. Chapter 10. The Dawn of Still Waters. The dawn came quietly to Lunareth, as though it, too, had been soothed by the lanterns drifting down the river the night before. No trumpet of birdsong, no rush of light across the hills. Instead, the morning unfolded like a book turned slowly, each page a wash of pale gold and soft lavender across the sky. The river, once alive with hundreds of glowing lanterns, now flowed with calm dignity. A few reeds swayed at its banks, brushed by the earliest breezes of the day. The surface gleamed faintly with light, not from flame but from the sun's first reflections. It seemed to carry the memory of the lanterns still, as though it had absorbed their glow, promising to hold them safe as it moved on. Phoenix rose with the light. His dreams the night before had been gentle, filled not with questions but with warmth. Images of drifting lanterns, silver stars, and voices softened by peace. He stepped outside and found the village still hushed, as if all of Lunareth had chosen to linger a little longer in sleep. The air was cool, the grass damp with dew, and somewhere, Far off, a single bell tolled slowly, marking the new day. Harmony appeared not long after, her hair loose, her eyes soft with rest. She carried her lute but did not play it yet, letting silence have its place in the morning. Indigo followed, her shawl draped lightly over her shoulders, her steps unhurried, her presence steady as a river stone. Together, without need for words, they walked to the water's edge. The village would wake soon, but for now the river belonged to them. Phoenix knelt at the bank, cupping water in his hands. It was cool, clear, reflecting the gentle colors of dawn. He let it run through his fingers, back into the stream, watching as ripples spread outward, softening into nothing. "The water feels different," he said quietly, his voice barely above the hush of the current. Harmony tilted her head, crouching nearby. "It remembers. It always does. Every lantern, every reflection. It carries them long after we let them go." Indigo seated herself upon a smooth stone, her shawl brushing the surface. "And so it is with us. We carry nights and mornings, joys and sorrows, not as burdens but as memory. They move through us, as the river moves through the valley." Phoenix listened, the words echoing in the calm space between his heartbeats. He traced a line upon his arm, following one of the many paths of the map inscribed upon his skin. For the first time, he did not wonder where it led. Instead, he thought of what it carried: the stars, the lanterns, the voices of those beside him. Perhaps the map was not pointing outward but inward, guiding him not toward places, but toward ways of being. The three sat in silence for a long while, the sun lifting slowly above the horizon, the sky brightening with every passing breath. Villagers began to stir in the distance, doors opening, fires being lit, gentle chatter rising. But here, by the river, time stretched softly. Harmony plucked a single note on her lute, letting it hum in the morning air. The sound was low, resonant, a thread of music that felt like the voice of the dawn itself. Indigo closed her eyes, adding a quiet hum, her voice blending so gently with the string that the two became indistinguishable. Phoenix leaned back against the grass, his gaze on the sky, and let the sound wash over him. The music did not rise. It did not quicken. It flowed like water, like wind through tall grass, like the slow rhythm of lanterns drifting downstream. It was not a song to be remembered, but a song to be lived only in that moment, dissolving into the morning as tenderly as mist dissolves into air. When the last note faded, silence returned, but it was not empty. It was full, holding everything the three had shared. Phoenix exhaled, slow and steady. "I think," he said, his voice soft, "that the map is not about finding a place. It's about learning to walk gently, wherever I go." Harmony smiled faintly, her fingers brushing the strings of her lute without sound. "Then you have already begun." Indigo opened her eyes, their depth calm as the river. "And there will always be companions to walk beside you." The words settled around them like a blessing. The morning grew brighter, but the peace of the night lingered, woven into their breaths, their silence, their gentle awareness of one another. In the distance, children's laughter began to rise as they chased one another through the lanes. Smoke curled from chimneys, carrying the scent of bread and herbs. The village returned to life, not with noise but with rhythm, as though every action, no matter how simple, was part of the same song. Phoenix, Harmony, and Indigo stood at last. They turned from the river and walked back toward the heart of Lunareth. The road was soft beneath their feet, the air filled with the quiet promise of another day. They did not need to rush. There was no place to be other than here, no time to keep other than now. As they passed through the village, faces greeted them with warmth. Children waved, elders nodded, neighbors offered smiles. No one asked questions of Phoenix's map. No one pressed for meaning. They simply welcomed him as they had from the beginning, with kindness as steady as lantern light. By the time they reached Harmony's home, the sun had risen fully, casting long beams of gold across the fields. The shadows of the night had retreated, but not as enemies, only as travelers making way for morning. Phoenix paused at the doorway, looking back once more at the river glimmering in the distance. He felt no longing to follow it, no urgency to chase the lanterns or the stars. Instead, he felt whole, his journey not ended, but softened into something he could carry within him. He stepped inside with Harmony and Indigo, the door closing softly behind them. The fire was lit, the scent of baking bread filled the air, and the walls seemed to hold them gently, like the arms of the kingdom itself. And so, in Lunareth, where rivers flowed like memory and stars fell like dreams, the child born with a map upon his skin found not a destination, but a way of living. Slowly, kindly, with light always near. The dawn of still waters had come, and with it, a peace that would last long after the day had moved on.